Right, for this video, we are going to go through the ECHR, which is the European Convention of Human Rights. I always thought it was the European Court of Human Rights, although I think they're both connected. So anyways, for this video, we're going to go through what it is, why it's important, then we're going to go through the actual pamphlet itself, going through all the rights we get. Because both the Tory party and Reform, they want to take us out. And that's going to be very catastrophic if that happens. And I'm going to tell you why with this video. So without further ado, let's get right down to it. So what is the ECHR and why does it matter? So the ECHR is the European Convention on Human Rights. It was drafted in the aftermath of the Second World War and the Holocaust in an attempt to protect the people from the state, make sure the atrocities committed will never be repeated, and safeguard fundamental rights. Yeah, so this, like I was saying, both the Conservatives and Reform want to remove us from this, get rid of the human rights. We can't let that happen. The United Kingdom played an important role in the birth of the ECHR, with British lawyers integral to the drafting of the text, and Winston Churchill a key early advocate. The ECHR guaranteed people's fundamental human rights in law for the first time. The rights we are all accustomed to come from the UK signing the convention. Since the UK signed the convention in 1951, it has protected us from things like torture, killing, and slavery, and assures our freedom of speech, assembly, religion, privacy, and much more. What is the European Court of Human Rights? So this is something similar here. The European Court of Human Rights, the ECTHR, enforces the ECHR. Right. In other words, it makes sure that the rights given by the Convention are protected in practice. Until the Human Rights Act was passed in 1998, the only way that people in the UK could enforce their rights was to take a case against the government to the ECTHR in Strasbourg. Between 1951 and 2000, the ECTHR found many human rights violations by the UK government against UK citizens. Really? Like the DWP or an early version? Now, with the Human Rights Act in place, human rights cases are heard in domestic courts, saving a large amount of time and money for both individuals and the state. Cases that have gone through UK courts can still be appealed to Strasbourg, but the ECTHR now finds many fewer violations because the HRA allows our own judges to take care of them before it goes that far. Right. What does the ECHR have to do with the European Union? Nothing. There you go. Just because you have Brexit doesn't mean we have to leave this, but we have to stay in it. This is important. The ECHR was launched by the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is older than the European Union. There you go, and not connected to it. See, Brexiteers. Confusingly, the Council of Europe is also not the same as the European Council, which is an institution of the European Union. 19 of the 46 member states of the Council of Europe, including the United Kingdom, are not members of the EU, sadly. Bollocks to Brexit. What have the ECHR and the ECTHR ever done for us? There have been several important cases that have gone to the ECTHR which have protected and advanced human rights in the UK. Freedom of expression for the press comes from a case known as Sunday Times from 1979. Okay. The decriminalisation of homosexual acts in Northern Ireland came about thanks to a case called Dudgeon from 1981. That might be something to look into. A case called Smith and Grady made clear that banning LGBT plus people from serving in the armed forces breaches human rights. Damned right. Not that I agree with the armed forces, but yeah. Since the human rights came into force in 2000, that recently, we can enforce the convention rights in our own domestic courts. But the ECTHR still acts as a backdrop, making important judgments relating to religious freedom, AWIDA, whatever that means, excuse me, disabled people deprived of their liberty, HL, protests, Gillian and Quinton, and more. The ECHR and the Human Rights Act protect us every day. The HRA insists that public authorities, such as government departments, local councils, police, schools, certain care providers, and prisons, must act in a way that is compatible with the Convention rights. In this way, we are protected long before something ever gets to court. The ECHR is a living instrument, which means that the rights protected in it will develop over time in accordance with changes to social norms, etc. For example, a case called Goodwin established the right to change one's legal gender in the UK. Staying in the ECHR and retaining the HRA means that our human rights protections can also continue to evolve with the times. Yeah. See all that I read. If we go out, all this will be gone. And that British Bill of Rights thing, that's probably not going to help us very much. And here we go. What would leaving the ECHR mean for international human rights? This is important now. Leaving the ECHR and reneging on our obligations would undermine the UK's credibility. Yeah, it would. In criticising human rights abuses abroad, whether that is in Ukraine or China. Yeah. It would also prevent us from being able to influence the way that the ECTHR judges human rights cases. It would also risk setting a precedent for other countries to violate individuals' rights or to leave the ECHR, which would be a major step backwards for international human rights. Yeah, same with Brexit. What are politicians proposing? After the European Court of Human Rights grounded the first planned flight of refugees to Rwanda, some politicians have raised the possibility of the UK leaving the ECHR. This would make the UK the first nation to voluntarily withdraw from the ECHR. Be a disgrace for that happening like the EU. The only other European nations not signed up to the ECHR are Belarus and Russia, which has been expelled because of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So if we leave the Council of Europe, and we'll be in the same club as Belarus and Russia, isolated, very isolated. If we left the ECHR, what would this mean for ordinary people in the UK? Leaving the ECHR would put everyone's rights at risk. The ECTHR is a person's last resort for holding the state to account when it has abused their rights. And if we leave, we won't be able to do this. We'll be fucked. The government is already planning to weaken human rights in the UK through its rights removal bill, which will make it much harder for people to get justice if their rights have been abused. Labour better not do this, get rid of the Rwanda bill, keep us in this. Without the protection of the Human Rights Act or the ECHR, the UK government, or anyone for that matter, would have a power to do whatever it wants to individuals' rights with no threat of consequences yet. That's what Tories and Reform want to do. And all the racists and what have you. Leaving the ECHR would also breach the Good Friday Agreement, as Brexit has already done, which requires that the convention be directly enforceable to Northern Ireland. Yeah, this would threaten the peace settlement. Yeah, and it's going to make the Troubles come back and even worse. And I think that's it for this one. Yeah. So that's what it is, and why it's important. and what's going to happen if we leave. Now we're going to look at it. Look up the human rights thing itself. So this is a pamphlet. It's a 34-page document, and as you can see here, so it's so we got it's amended by protocols numbers 11, 14, and 15, supplemented by protocols numbers 1, 4, 6, 7, 12, 13, and 16, whatever that means. So you don't need to worry about it. This is all just copyright and forward stuff. So the government's signatory Hereto, what is, being members of the Council of Europe, so this writing's a bit small, considering the Universal Declaration of Human Rights proclaimed by the General Assembly of the UN on 10th of December 1948. So you see that's that long ago. We've been there all since after the Second World War. That's how important it is. How long we've been in it. Considering that this declaration aims at securing the universal and effective recognition and observance of the rights therein declared. Considering that the aim of the Council of Europe is the achievement of greater unity between its members, and that one of the methods by which aim is to be pursued is the maintenance and further realization of the human rights and fundamental freedoms, reaffirming a profound belief in those fundamental freedoms which are the foundation of justice and peace in the world, are best maintained as, on the one hand, by an effective political democracy, and on the other, by a common understanding and the observance of the human rights upon which we depend, being resolved as a government of European countries which are like-minded and have a common heritage of political traditions, ideals, freedoms, and the rule of law, to take the first steps for the collective enforcement of a certain of the rights stated in the Universal Declaration. And hold on a second. Yeah, and contrary to what Sunak and Farage and what have you believe say, it's not a foreign court. It's an important European court, collectively, for human rights. It's not a foreign, it's not nothing to do with the EU and what have you. So yeah. So affirming that the high contracting parties, in accordance with the principle of subsidiarity, have a primary responsibility to secure the rights and freedoms defined in this convention and the protocols thereto, and that in doing so, they enjoy a margin of appreciation subject to the supervisory jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights, established by the Convention, have agreed as follows. Article 1. Obligation to respect human rights. The high contracting parties shall secure to everyone within the jurisdiction of the rights and freedoms defined in Section 1 of this Convention. Section 1. Rights and freedoms. Article 2. Right to life. Yes. Everyone's right to life shall be protected by law, as it should. No one shall be deprived of his life intentionally, save in the execution of a sentence of a court followed his conviction of a crime for which this penalty is provided by law. As long as if they be found guilty of without any doubt and not wrongly convicted. Deprivation of life shall not be regarded as inflicted in contravention of this article, which only results from the use of force, which is no more than absolutely necessary in defence of any person from unlawful violence, in order to effect a lawful arrest or to prevent the escape of a person lawfully detained. An action lawfully taken for the purpose of quelling a riot or insurrection. But again, yeah, lawful arrest does not mean take away their life. Article 3. Prohibition of torture. No one shall be subjected to torture or to do inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 4. Prohibition of slavery and forced labour. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. No one shall be required to perform forced or compulsory labour. For the purpose of this article, the term forced or compulsory labour shall not include any work required to be done in the ordinary course of detention, imposed according to the provisions of Article 5 of this Convention or during conditional release from such detention. Any service of a military character, or in case of conscientious objectors, in countries where they are recognised, service exacted instead of compulsory military service. Any service exacted in case of an emergency or calamity threatening the life or well-being of community. Any work or service which forms part of a normal civic obligations. Article 5. Right to liberty and security. Everyone has the right to liberty and security of person. No one shall be deprived of his liberty save in the following cases and in accordance of a procedure described by law. The lawful detention of a person after conviction by a competent court, the lawful arrest or detention of a person for non-compliance with the lawful order of a court or in order to secure the fulfillment of any obligation prescribed by law, the lawful arrest or detention of a person effected for the purpose of bringing him before the competent legal authority on reasonable suspicion of having committed an offence, or when it is reasonably considered necessary to prevent his committing an offence or fleeing as having done so. It's a bit of a long sentence, that. The detention of a minor by lawful order for the purpose of educational supervision, or his lawful detention for the purpose of bringing him before the competent legal authority. The lawful detention of persons for the prevention of spreading of infectious diseases, or persons of unsound mind, alcoholics, or drug addicts, or vagrants. What's wrong with vagrants? Vagrants are just homeless people, isn't it? The lawful arrest or detention of a person to prevent his effect on an unauthorized entry into the country, or of a person against whom action is being taken with a view to deportation or extradition. Everyone who is arrested shall be informed properly, in a language which he understands, of the reasons for his arrest and any charge against him or her. Everyone arrested or detained in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 1c of this article shall be brought promptly before a judge or officer authorised by law to exercise judicial power and shall be entitled to trial within a reasonable time or to release pending trial. Release may be conditioned by a guarantee to appeal for trial. Everyone who is deprived of his liberty by arrest or detention shall be entitled to take proceedings by which the lawfulness of his detention shall be decided speedily by a court and his release ordered if his detention is not lawful. Everyone who has been the victim of arrest or detention in contravention of the provisions of this article shall have an enforceable right to compensation. Okay. Article 6. Right to a fair trial. In the determination of his civil rights and obligations or of any criminal charge against him, everyone is entitled to a fair and public hearing within a reasonable time by an independent and impartial tribunal established by law. Judgment shall be pronounced publicly, but the press and public may be excluded from all or part of a trial in the interest of morals, public order, or national security, in a democratic society where the interests of juveniles or the protection of the private life of the parties so require, or to the extent strictly necessary, in the opinion of the court, in special circumstances where publicity would prejudice the interest of justice. Everyone charged with a criminal offence shall be presumed innocent until proved guilty according to law, as long as they're not wrongly convicted. Paragraph 3. Everyone charged with a criminal offence has the following minimum rights: to be informed promptly, in a language which he understands and in detail of the nature and cause of the accusation against him, to have adequate time and facilities for the preparation of his defence, to defend himself in person or through legal assistance of his own choosing, or if he has not sufficient means to pay for his legal assistance, to be given it free when the interests of justice so require. Talking about like a lawyer, isn't it? To examine or have examined witnesses against him, and to obtain his attendance and examination of witnesses on his behalf under the same conditions as witnesses against him, like prosecution and defence. To have a free assistance of an interpreter if he cannot understand or speak the language used in court. Okay, yeah. Article 7. No punishment without law. No one shall be held guilty of any criminal offence on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a criminal offence under national or international law at the time when it was committed, nor shall a heavy penalty be imposed than for one that was applicable at the time criminal offence was committed. This article shall not prejudice the trial and punishment of any person for any act or omission which, at the time when it was committed, was criminal according to the general principles of the law recognised by civilised nations. Excuse me. Article 8. Right to respect for private and family life. Everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. There shall be no interference by a public authority with the exercise of this right except such as is in accordance with the law and is necessary in a democratic society in the interest of national security, public safety, or the economic well-being of the country, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of the health of morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. Article 9. Freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. I can't say that right. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief and freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in worship, teaching, practice, and observance. Freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs shall be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary to a democratic society in the interest of public safety, for the protection of public order, health, or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. Article 10. Freedom of expression. Everyone has the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include the freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. This article shall not prevent states from requiring the licensing of broadcasting, television, or cinema enterprises. The exercise of these freedoms, since it carries with its duties and responsibilities, may be subject to such formalities, conditions, restrictions, or penalties, or as prescribed by law, and are necessary in a democratic society in the interest of national of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, for the protection of reputation of rights in others, for preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, or for maintaining the authority and impartiality of a judiciary. Bloody hell. So many long sentences. Article 11. Freedom of assembly and association. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and to freedom of association with others, including the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. No restrictions shall be placed on the exercise of these rights other than such are prescribed by law and are necessary to a democratic society in the interest of national security or public safety, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, or the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. This article shall not prevent the imposition of lawful restrictions on the exercise of these rights of members of the armed forces, of the police, or by the administration of the state. Right to marry. Men and women of marriageable age have a right to marry and to find a family according to the national laws governing the exercise of this right. And what about homosexuals, gays, and lesbians, whatever? Anyway. Article 13. Right to an effective remedy. Everyone whose rights and freedoms are set forth in the Convention are violated shall have an effective remedy before a national authority, notwithstanding that a violation has been committed by persons acting in an official capacity. Article 14. Prohibition of discrimination. The enjoyment of the rights and freedoms set forth in this convention shall be secured without discrimination of any ground such as sex, race, colour, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, association with a national minority, property of birth, or other status. Article 15. Derogation in time of emergency. In the time of war or other public emergency threatening the life or ordination of any high contracted party, may take measures derogating from its obligations under the Convention to the extent strictly required by exigencies of the situation, providing that such measures are not consistent with its other obligations under international law. Okay. Because this is going to take a while to read, so I'm just going to go through the main parts. So no derogation yet. Article 16, restrictions on political activity of aliens. I'm guessing that means like foreign people, not obviously not real aliens. Prohibition of abusive rights, yeah. Limitation of use of restrictions of rights. Establishment of a court. Because a number of judges, yeah. Court criteria for office. High moral character. Candidates shall be less than 65 years. Article 22. For sit in the court for individual capacity. Election of judges. That's something that has to do with the court. Terms of office is 9 years. Registry and repertoires. Plenary court. Single judge formation committees, chambers and grand chambers. I think this is all related to the ECHR, I think. Competence of single judges. Competence of committees. Decisions by chambers and admission. Yeah, I can't remember if you know this. This is more to just do with the court system. Grand chamber, what that means. Jurisdiction of a court. Third party intervention, striking applications, examination of a case. I think this is just telling you like how the court works thing and how it's all set up, rather than the rights. Okay, really. Public hearings and access to documents. Final judgment. Judgment of a grand chamber shall be final. So if for whatever reason it goes against you for whatever you're appealing against, can you actually appeal if it's they made the decision against you? Reasons for judgment and decisions. Yeah, okay. Binding force and execution of judgments. Advisory jurisdiction of a court. Advisory stuff, court stuff. Secretary General, safeguard for existing human rights. So I think we've already gone through the actual rights itself. This is just talking about the courts and stuff now. Okay, so protocol, page 18. So that's to do with protection of property. That's to do with theft and stuff like that. Right to education, yeah, obviously. Right to free education, right to free elections. Territorial application, relationship to the convention, signature and ratification. Prohibition of the imprisonment of debt. Yes, you can't. Yeah, with debts, there's money to do with money, so not your fault if it gets to debt sometimes. Freedom of movement, yeah. Freedom of movement. Within that thing, you need to get that back. Prohibition of expulsion of nationals. No one shall be expelled. Yeah. Deported. Prohibition of a collective expulsion of aliens. Territorial application. Relationship to the convention. Signature and ratification. Yeah, they don't really need to read all this. Abolition of the death penalty. Yeah, that's an important one. Because none of the old BNP and whatnot, if we were to leave the ECHR, they could end up using that as an excuse to bring the death penalty back. That should be a no. Death penalty in time of war. Okay. Yeah, same thing. Prohibition of derogations. What's wrong with this? Prohibition of reservations. Territorial application. Relationship to the convention again. Entry into force. Depository functions. Procedural. Safeguards relating to the expulsion of aliens. Right of appeal in criminal matters. Compensation for wrongful conviction. Yeah, that's an important one as well. So if you're wrongly convicted, you can use ECHR to appeal if a British court goes against you or whatever. And if we leave that way, you're buggered. Right not to be tried or punished twice. That kind of relates to double jeopardy, like we have in America. equality between spouses, territory. What's this territorial application that keeps coming up all the time? Any state, yeah. Any declaration. Relationship to a convention, signature and ratification, entry into force. Again, general prohibition of discrimination. Yeah, like racism, sexism, homophobia, whatnot. And again, abolition of the death penalty. Yet, the death penalty shall be abolished. It is abolished. No one shall be condemned to penalty or excluded. No derogations. Some of it's a bit repeated, I think, but yeah, I don't know. Regions shall be given advisory opinions. Advisory opinions, and that's it. Yeah, so basically that it was the ECHR. A lot of it is just a bit repeated, just trying to turn out the court system, but telling most about the basic human rights. And what's important is it's related to the whole of Europe. It's nothing to do with the EU. And if we leave it, we're buggered. We've been in the same club as Russia and Belarus, and they were expelled. They didn't choose to leave. If we choose to leave, we were going to be isolated, just like we were already isolated with the Brexit. And that is why we have to stay in. Don't vote Reform. Don't vote for Tories. Keep the ECHR because that's a very important thing, and we should never leave it. We need to stay in it. It's nothing to do with the EU or anything like that. It's older than the EU. So yeah, there you go.